Regarding the deficit commission, we've looked at the makeup of it, and for the most part, it's a creature of the status quo. It's the same people that have had the same ideas for 40 years now, as we've seen increasing numbers of poor, increasing numbers of ultra-wealthy, and a shrinking middle class. And frankly, a lot of people don't necessarily trust them to come up with out-of-the-box solutions, like generating growth through a new energy economy. Tax increases, it looks like they're talking about a value-added tax, which is very regressive and would impact everybody in society, as opposed to targeted tax increases for people that, say, benefited from the bailouts. Do you have confidence in the deficit commission as
yes, I do, and
somebody with
I
a
don't know where this
constituency
is
that
coming.
needs to be protected?
I don't know where this is coming from about a value-added tax, and I'm one of those people who, 20 years ago, was what I would call a Fritz Holland's disciple on this issue, and I thought at that time, although I've come to a different conclusion, that a VAT tax might be a way to go. The fact of the matter is, I've studied it more, and I think it's much more regressive than I think it ought to be. I've talked to members of the commission. There's not a single soul in that commission I know of that's considered a VAT tax.
I think it may be coming from the White House.
Well, I don't know where. Well, I've talked to the commission, and I have no idea. In fact, I've met with them as recent as on yesterday.
A cut in the corporate tax in exchange for a value-added tax.
Well, that may be. All I'm saying is the people I talk to tell me that ain't on the table. That hadn't been discussed. And quite frankly, I don't think that Jan Schakowsky, Javier Becerra,
those are two of the three that we think are standing up for us, but it's an 18-member commission.
Well, yeah, I can only deal with the House side. We got three, John Spratt. These are the three House members. I was very much a part of Nancy Pelosi's discussions as to who ought to be on that commission, and I'm very comfortable with all three of those people. Now, I don't know who may be on the Senate side, and who I think there's one African-American woman who was retired corporate exec from that the president has put on there, but I don't know the other people. I certainly won't call those three people part of the established order of things.
One last question I have regards Social Security in particular. The refrain last decade was, it's the people's money, we need to give it back to them. So there were huge tax cuts that benefited, in large part, the ultra-wealthy. But those tax cuts came from the paychecks of workers in America. It was Social Security revenues that were essentially transferred to the very wealthy. Do you think Social Security will survive as it is, or do you think it'll be cut?
I don't think Social Security will be cut. I think there'll be modifications. I think there'll be adjustments. I'm one of those people. I campaigned on, I think the last time I went out campaigning, it was like $90,000 that you paid on your first $90,000. I said at that time, I think it's unfair for a person who makes $50,000 a year to be paying 100% of his or her income into the Social Security Trust Fund, and someone who makes $90,000 a year or $95,000 a year be paying
I made the same point with Rush Limbaugh. Why does Michael Moore get to pay less than 1% of his income, where I have to pay?
And that's been my position, and I made that very clear in meeting with the commission members on yesterday, that's where I am. And I think, to be fair, I may get beaten up by some people on this, and that's all right. I get beaten up a lot. But I think, to be fair, you cannot possibly not modify a program that at the time of its enactment, we had 17 people working for every one person that was a retiree. Today, you got about 3 people working for every one person that's a retiree. Now, that is unsustainable. Now, what we've got to do is really get real about how we make that kind of adjustment. People are living longer. At the turn of the last century, the life expectancy in this country was less than 50 years. At the turn of this century, life expectancy got over 70 years. When I was a little boy, my dad was 55 years old. I thought he was an old man. Come July 21st, if all goes well, I'm going to be 70 years old. I'm not thinking about retiring. And so most 70-year-olds I know are not thinking about retiring anymore. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration as we look at going forward.
Is means testing the fairest way?
I think that's one way that we ought to be discussing means testing. I think that those of us who operate at the income level that I operate at ought to be means tested.
Well, thanks, Congressman.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.